Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we simplify the college planning process for our families. I'm Kristin Clark, and I work with students to help them figure out a career path and a college major. And I'm here with Bobby Hood, our ACT SAT main man. Bobby, how are you doing?
Just great. It's wonderful to be here. It's always fun to talk about the ACT and SAT because I know these are things that students really fear a lot during school, right? And they just feel like they're just not good at it and they don't know how to approach it, right?
Yeah, so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the ACT and the reading portion of that ACT.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the thing with the reading test is that students think, okay, this reading test, like I should do what I do in school, right? Which is like they give me a reading passage and I should read it really carefully, right? And so I'm going to put one up on screen here. And so you can see now this passage, I'm not expecting you to be able to read that, right? This is just a passage, right? And it's got, you can see like 5 paragraphs and it's a lot of words. And this is a passage that's about like George Washington. And so if I like zoom in a little bit.
Hey, and Bobby, give
Yeah.
me some information here. How long do
Yep.
they have on the reading test, and how many questions?
Yeah. So you have 35 minutes to take the test, and there are 40 questions, 10
Ooh,
each on each passage. Right. So that's
okay.
less than 1 minute per question,
And this is a
even if you
long
don't read the
passage.
passage. Right. And so if you start reading this, you can see this is about George Washington. It's very boring. Right. And so you can see students, if they try to read this up front, they're going to get bored. They're going to zone out. They're going to realize they're just staring at it and not really understanding what any of it says. And they're going to use up all this time. Like, let's say you spent 5 minutes trying to read all this, right? And understand it really well. Well, if you do that on 4 passages, that's 20 minutes that you spend and you've got no points yet. And
No,
now
and
you only
Bobby,
have
I got to tell you,
15 minutes left.
well, and like for somebody like me,
Mm-hmm.
where like being timed makes me
Yeah,
very anxious.
exactly.
Okay, so tell us how to make this right.
Absolutely. Right. So here's the thing. The first thing is you don't need to read it in detail up front at all. Now, what you might do is like read through it really quickly just to see where things are. Like, for instance, this paragraph that you can see on the top left on the screen, I can see that it's about George Washington. I can see some capital letters: George Washington, Henry Knox, Mount Vernon, right? Okay, fine. This paragraph is something about George Washington and being president, right? And the next paragraph, somebody named Thompson and Mount Vernon. So, okay, this is a story about George Washington and people talking to him about being president, I guess, right? But I don't need to read it in detail, right? I can see again the next paragraph. Now, Mount Vernon, and you've been elected president, and somebody named Langdon. So, yeah, when I have questions, I can just look for those names, right? And then I say, okay, if there's a question about Langdon or Thompson, I've seen their names. And then here in the last paragraph, okay, it's about Mount Vernon and then Martha Washington or whatever, right? So, like, maybe I might spend 1 minute looking to see where things are so I can find them later. Or maybe I don't read up front at all because the reading test is just a big word search puzzle. It's all it is word searching. So let's come back and look at so here's a bunch of questions. And
Yeah,
if
give me an example. Here,
yeah,
Bobby tests me on
absolutely.
these every week, guys. And
Absolutely. So I look at these questions, and some of these questions look like they would be hard to figure out how to answer. So I'm going to save those to go later. But then let's pick out a question here. So see if you can see this question.
Yep.
Okay. So this question mentions Thompson and Mount Vernon. So from that upfront read, we might say, okay, yeah, okay, I can find Thompson and Mount Vernon. I remember seeing those in a couple of different paragraphs, but I searched for the paragraph that has both Thompson and Mount Vernon, right? And so here's Thompson and here's Mount Vernon. Now, the trick to the test is once you find those words, you want to look in a window of about 10 lines, 5 lines up and down, for other words from the question.
Yeah, it's the travel word.
So we need to find the word journey. Where is the word journey? You see it?
So his journey. So let's look for that.
It's often 3 or 4 or 5 lines away from where they pointed you.
Oh, he had a lot of rivers.
Yeah. And
Large
so
rivers.
you find the word journey, and then now we are looking near that word journey for what made it difficult. And what made it difficult is weather, roads, and rivers, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what's the answer then?
Terrible weather. C.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is what the test is. And you see that you didn't need to know, like, understand anything. You just find these words, look 5 lines up and down, and there's the answer. And the answer was 5 lines down from the first words you looked for.
So, Bobby, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Then what's the purpose?
That is a very good question. And I mean, the purpose is to make a test that is standardized and predictable and always the same.
Yeah.
And so this is how every reading test that is multiple choice in the world is. The LSAT for law school is like this. The STAR test that students take in school is like this. This 5-line window thing is how every reading test works. It's just how reading is tested, because, like, if you actually wanted to test how, like, what things mean, then that's the AP literature test, where you actually have to understand what passages mean and, like, say things about the meaning. They just don't test it on anything else because it's too hard to test and it's inconsistent if you test it. And so it's just, can you search? And, I think you remember in school, they did say, whenever you're answering questions about reading, you should read the context. You should read before and after to make sure you understand the context. And that's exactly what this is can you read not just the sentence that was in green there, but also the sentence 1 and 2 sentences before and after. That's all it is. And so then, because they're testing, can you read, nearby, the answer is often 3 to 5 lines away, and that's just the pattern. But the trick is that it's a word matching puzzle, because it has to be, because that's just kind of how reading works, which is interesting, right? So let's look at another one. So on this question, what should we search for to find the answer to this question?
Martha
What's the easy
Washington.
thing? Yeah, Martha Washington. Okay, so Martha Washington is only mentioned once in the passage, and it's easy to find because it has capital letters in it. Okay, so now that we found Martha Washington, what else should we look for within that window of 5 lines up and down?
She wanted her husband to return to public life.
Yeah, it's something about her husband's return to life, her view on it. Okay, do you see the actual words, return to public life? Probably
Yes.
about 5 lines away. You see it way down here?
Yeah, I think it was much too late for him to go into public life.
Yep. So her view is that it's much too late, but it was not to be avoided. So that is inevitable. Literally, the word not avoided.
Yep. I get
That's it. And once again, there's the answer, 5 lines away. Now, sometimes the answer is 1 or 2 lines away, right? But those are easier because most students find those. But most students just did not know that the whole trick is find these words, look 5 lines down, find the other words, and then look over there for the answer, right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And this is not oversimplifying it. This is how the test works. And so sometimes a student will take a test I've never seen before, but we review it and I say, okay, well, let's look 5 lines away. Oh, there's the answer. Okay. And once students realize this.
This might be a silly question. Can they take highlighters into this class?
You cannot take highlighters into the test, only a pencil. So
Okay.
I'm doing all this highlighting to kind of show students how their eyes should move. But you can't do it. And also, even when it's online, you can't press Control F and search for Martha Washington, which would make the test a lot easier. If you
Yes,
could,
it would.
Right? But once I show this to students, they say, oh, well, I can do that. And I'm like, you're right, you can do well on this test, because they think that they needed that I was going to teach them how to read better or something, right? And that's not the thing. And so out of the 40 questions, about 25 of the questions are just like what we just looked at, word search puzzle questions. There are only 2 other questions. There's 6 questions that look like this. So that's 25 plus 6 is 31. This is a vocabulary in context question. Now, this is really funny because this asks what the word mark means. And if you think about the word mark, you might think, okay, if I spilled something on my shirt, I would have a mark on my shirt and that would be a stain. Or you might think,
Right.
oh, I need to
Yeah.
mark,
So
I
this
need to mark the
says
edges of my yard,
the
and it would
hope
say
that so
boundary.
auspicious a mark of public
Yeah.
confidence. So
So
it's
here's
a
the thing.
sign.
It is absolutely. Now, how did you figure that out though?
I had to read the sentence and I had to
Okay.
figure out the meaning of the word.
Yeah. And so what you do is you say, okay, you got to get rid of that word mark. And you say, okay, this is something about public confidence and support from people, right? Again, using that window of 5 lines up and down. And you say, okay, it was when, so I could kind of hear you when you're saying that. You said, indulge the hope that so auspicious and then like, that doesn't mean anything, right? But then you saw a mark of public confidence. And you're like, oh, okay, this is about something about showing confidence. And then those words led you to the word sign, right?
Right.
And that's what it is using the words from nearby. But if you just think about the word, which is what students do, if they say, oh, mark, okay, if I wanted to mark the area of my yard, I would put up signs marking the boundary. That would be F. Or if I got hit by a baseball, then I would have a bruise, and that would be an impact mark, So all the words, all the answers are different meanings of the word mark, and you just got to figure out which one they're using there. And also you notice that the word sign would sound good.
Yes, I liked that. That made sense to me where you crossed it out and replaced it.
Exactly. A stain of public confidence doesn't sound right, or a boundary of public confidence sounds weird, right? So that's it. So these are just, once you know to ignore the word and just use the context. And again, you notice it's that 5-line window again, right? And then finally, how about what's the broad, general, overall message of the passage? Now that, it seems like you would need to read the passage to be able to answer, right? It's the main point. So this question I would wait and do last. But the funny thing about main point questions is they are always answered from the first and last paragraphs and the title. And even better, they're answered by the first and last sentences a lot of the time. So if we want the main point of this passage, I mean, you could just start with the title is The Reluctant President. There's only one answer in here about being reluctant, which is being insecure. But then if you look at the first sentence, it says the delay in certifying as president allowed doubts to fester. So the first sentence of the passage is about George Washington's doubts festering. And we already saw that last sentence. Martha Washington thinks it's much too late, but it can't be avoided. You see how all three of those spots all are about deep private insecurities.
Right.
But if you were to try to read the whole passage and think about it, you would be remembering all this stuff from the middle. And those would be the traps, right? But it's just, they're testing whether you know that the main point will always come from the beginning and end, because that's what you learned in 5th grade, right? When you write a 5-paragraph essay, put the thesis at the beginning and end. And there are about 6 of these overview main point questions. So 25 word search puzzle questions, 6 vocab questions, 6 main point questions. That adds up to about 37 questions. And then there's like 3 other just random, other questions. And that's it. So this strategy right there, those 3 question types, students can take this and not worry about being a good reader and not worry about reading in detail up front. Maybe read really quickly just to see where things are so you can search for them. And then just treat the whole thing like it's a big word search and word matching puzzle. And that's it. That's reading.
Right. It goes back to, Bobby, hard things are not that hard.
Absolutely. And that's the point. And we are going to continue going on with this series talking about, kind of joining into college and the same thing there.
All right. I appreciate it.
Have a
We
great
will
week.
talk next week.